Then I need a motion to open the public portion of the Village of Bronxville Board of Trustees meeting, July 22nd, 2021.
So moved.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, and we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And tonight we have I think, a really important presentation to start. We have our two village justices, Justice Prims and Justice Nordahl, and we have our court clerk and our assistant court clerk, which judges, I'd love you to introduce them to our audience, and you're going to give us a sort of state of the courts, and frankly, especially in light of what you all had to handle during COVID. I think Justice Prims, I guess, are you starting? And maybe you could introduce Kelly and Yesenia.
Thank you very much, Mayor Marvin. It is a pleasure to be here tonight, and I just have a few preliminaries before getting into the introduction, because that is very important. It's sort of an unusual circumstance with all that's happened with COVID.
Right.
Be in front of you as a first-term judge, and to have our court having passed through so many challenges due to the unprecedented changes, both on the legislative level in Albany and what's happened with COVID. And I just, before getting into anything else, I did want to say I think it's unfortunate that we were unable to really properly honor Judge George Mayer for his 16 years of very strong service on behalf of the village. Like a lot of things, that have fallen by the wayside. And he certainly was a dedicated public servant and was a great mentor to me in the early months of my tenure. And just before we go any further, and I know my colleagues agree with me on this, that all the difficulties that the court has had really pale in comparison to the kinds of problems that the staff at Village Hall has had to deal with, and coming in and really serving through the height of the pandemic, getting everything done. We're so grateful for that. So anyway, both Judge Nordahl and I are happy to report that with all these challenges, the court continues to function, maintaining its docket and its oversight of village parking enforcement while continuing to administer justice in the village. And now I can get around to introducing our clerks, because much of the credit for this good state of affairs goes to our court clerks who are here tonight. As you know from the testimonial given to her a couple of years ago at the trustees meeting, Clerk Kelly DeSimone has been honored as New York's Court Clerk of the Year in 2019.
Yeah.
And I have to say that all of her talents and extensive experience have been tested by the pandemic, but it's been a test that she has passed with flying colors. And Kelly, why don't you stand up so that people can see you. And also with us tonight is our still rather new assistant clerk, Yesenia Tovar, who joined us in August of 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. Yesenia succeeded Paula Giglio, who continues to serve the village as secretary to the building inspector. Like her mentor, Kelly, Yesenia has, at some personal sacrifice, provided continuity and great service through this difficult time. In particular, Yesenia's fluency in Spanish is a great help in our ability to communicate with residents of our surrounding communities, where Spanish truly is the second language. Yesenia, please stand up. Having had the pleasure to be able to report that our court has withstood the challenges of the pandemic, I should be candid and tell you there have been some areas of difficulty. First, the efficiency and fairness of criminal proceedings in our court have been enhanced over a number of years by the fact that the assistant district attorney assigned by the DA in White Plains to Bronxville has been John Thomas, an experienced and skilled prosecutor. At the beginning of this year, ADA Thomas was reassigned, and his successor is Michael Callan. Mr. Callan's off to a good start, but it would take time for even the most gifted prosecutor to become as deft as ADA Thomas was in prosecuting cases fairly and efficiently. Second, the conduct of court hearings as virtual proceedings has been difficult. I know that many village residents have learned to continue business, professional, and official activities on Zoom or other virtual platforms, but the conduct of criminal proceedings has, for us, been fraught with difficulty. Consider the fact that our court has jurisdiction of all crimes up to and including first-degree murder at the arraignment stage, and that it has the authority to sentence convicted defendants for up to a year in prison in the case of a misdemeanor conviction. With what's at stake, we need to be sure that our criminal matters are handled accurately and fairly. The ability to conduct criminal hearings in a way that defense counsel can have confidential communications with the client, while we as judges assure that all sides are heard and an official transcript is kept clear, is no easy feat. This all becomes harder when a translator needs to be employed. When we partially reopened with a requirement that all attendees at our hearings be masked, the prior difficulties were mitigated, but in-person proceedings introduced new problems of producing an accurate transcript while participants were speaking through masks. When I think of all the participants in our criminal justice system, judges, defendants, defense counsel, prosecutors, police officers, prison officials, and court reporters, I know that all of us yearn for a return to in-person proceedings, which I hope we're headed for. I know, obviously, there are problems in the country and problems here in our village. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have, but first, let me turn the mic over to my colleague, Judge Nordahl, who I know wants very much to address you.
Thank you, Judge Primps. Good evening, everybody. I'm just so thrilled to be here this evening. And I want to first start out by saying that I have received such a warm welcome when I started this position, and I've been the beneficiary of a great deal of mentorship from judges in the surrounding areas, and particularly from Judge Primps. I think we work very well together. We make a good team, and so I'm just so pleased to be here and to be in this position. That being said, starting a new position is always a challenging thing. I'm not sure anyone could have predicted what this last 9 months would look like, when you're learning the ropes and you're learning your position and you're doing your thing, and then you get an email from Albany that, in fact, no, everything's different. And then you say, oh, okay, I can do that. And then the next week, there's a different email. So it's been a year in which everyone's had to be nimble. And thankfully for us, we have the support of such wonderful clerks and the court staff and Village Hall, and so we were able to do it. But it's been, every day is an adventure. I did want to just comment briefly on safety. I thought you might be interested to know that we are having proceedings in person. And the way it goes is when you present yourself in the courtroom, the guards, who have now taken on heightened duties and responsibilities, have to ascertain whether or not you're vaccinated, and also they require identification to make sure that you are the person on the vaccine card. And if you are vaccinated, you're allowed to come in without a mask. But what they're also doing is separating the people who are coming to court so that we don't have every single person coming in. If you're waiting to speak to Mr. Ritz, you're not coming into the courtroom. And so this way we're able to spread people out more, and it's worked out very well. We're able to see people in person, which, as Judge Primps referenced, is so important. And we also maintain 6 feet of distancing in the courtroom. The other thing I thought I would just comment on briefly, which is sort of interesting, is the state of the landlord and tenant matters and law. What you may not realize is that, as Judge Primps referenced, we do have limits on criminal matters. We can arraign a felony, but we don't keep that felony because we have limits to our jurisdiction. A civil case, we have a limit of $3,000. However, on landlord-tenant, there's no limit whatsoever. And that's really sort of differentiates it from the other matters. At this moment in time, there's a moratorium on evictions until August 31st, and so we'll see what happens after that. But that's something that's sort of a changing and evolving landscape. But vis-a-vis landlord-tenant, we keep all those cases. And then the final thing I'll comment on, because I'm so excited, is weddings are no longer allowed to be conducted remotely. They were for a while, but tomorrow we actually have a wedding here with 20 people, and that will be the first one I officiate, so I'm super excited, and I'm a little nervous that I might cry at the ceremony. So I'm trying to, prepare myself. But again, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you both. Well, I have to say, being here every day, it's in true great Bronxville tradition. Our justices have just become a great team together, and it's a testimony to both of you. And quite frankly, it's the fact that both your clerks took their evening tonight to be here in support of you says so much about the four of you. So we're extraordinarily lucky to have you. So thank you so much. And honestly, my only question is, what more can we be doing to support you if, if there's something there? Because what you're doing is extraordinary. And I mean, I've watched how you had to handle, and Judge Nordal, you're right, things would change every week as to who could come, who couldn't come, and I watched Kelly and Yesenia have to deal with that as well. So anything else you would like from this group except eternal gratitude for your service, honestly?
We'll let you know, right?
Yeah. Perfect. Trustees, any comments to our team in the court?
It's just, like I say, Judge Nordal, it's just great to be able to welcome you officially and in person. And thank you for doing what you're doing. Appreciate your service.
I just want to let you know the pleasure is all mine.
Well,
It's really, it's a thrill, and it's funny when you go to judge school, which is, I did 5 days remote. I thought my head would explode. They show you a chart of all the judges in the state of New York, which is, like this, and then they say, because we're at the bottom.
Yeah.
You're holding it all up. So, for what it's worth, but it's enormously gratifying. It's my pleasure to serve. And every time we have court, I'm proud to be in this courtroom. I'm proud of our staff. The guards are doing a terrific job because without them, we'd all be a little nervous up there. And again, Yesenia and Kelly, and Yesenia, especially with the Spanish, to be able to have someone come into court and feel that they've been understood is a real important thing. So again, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, it's so great to have you setting an example for service to the village as well.
Judge Nordal, I just have to share with you, tomorrow when you do a wedding, my first wedding, I was the mayor 2 days. I could not believe I could legally marry anyone. So I was very nervous, and I told the family, and it didn't seem like the cheeriest of weddings. So I said, I just have to tell you, this is my first wedding. I understand it's your first wedding. And I said, I am going to wish us all many more. And the bride's mother, you don't want to know I don't even want to know where they are. So don't do that. Yes, stick to the script. No ad-libbing. Yeah.
Mayor, I'd just like to, again, thank you for being here. And I think doing this on an annual basis would really continue to be a good thing. And speaking as a new trustee, certainly don't assume that I have any level of knowledge of what you do. It's nice to know that you're back in session. I'd like to sit in on one of your in-person sessions now that you're up and running. But there's some folks on the board with more experience than I do, but please don't hesitate to tell me of anything that might be obvious to others, but not necessarily obvious to me. And speaking of questions which may be obvious, you both referenced the term guards. Are the people providing security members of our police department, or are they separate?
They are separate.
Yeah.
And that comes out of the separate budget we have, and you guys generally feel that's an adequate system.
I think we do. I'm sure that Judge Nordahl mentioned just how efficiently they've been handling things. We did have a system when I first took over 3 years ago, where we had, in addition to the 2 guards, we had a local police officer, one of our officers here in the courtroom, but we thought that was excessive and basically a waste of village resources. So I think we feel pretty comfortable. They do have, as Judge Nordahl says, an additional layer of responsibility now in terms of maintaining spacing and safety issues that they didn't have before, health safety issues.
Right.
Otherwise, they're metal detectors, and we feel pretty safe and secure because, obviously sometimes there are difficult situations that we're handling.
Bill, that changed sometime, I think, sometime in the last 10 years, that changed, because prior to this, we just had, was it 5-7 years ago? Do you remember, Kelly, something like that? It was mandated to have outside court security. Prior to that time, it was Bronxville police officers.
Yeah.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Judge Prims, first of all, both of you, thank you very much for your service and for all of you. Do you see that the court is back to pre-COVID levels in terms of activity now that, COVID restrictions have been lifted?
I think we're getting there. I don't think we're quite there yet. There are certain restraints, and certainly on the parking side, when we have traffic and parking sessions, there's less volume than we've seen in the past. Yeah. That's going to be changing. Please. Sure. Why don't you go ahead?
Sorry. We do have, for the parking and traffic, we're actually very fortunate because there are a number of other jurisdictions in which there's a very significant case backlog because during COVID, tickets were being written but not handled. We do have a plea by mail system, and so there are certain people who are not coming back at all. They're doing their plea by mail, and they're happy with it. So in some regards, who knows what the new numbers will be.
Sure. And I think Judge Nordahl would agree with me that our village attorney, Ron Ritz, is doing an excellent job. And there are some tricky ethical and legal issues in terms of doing it by mail because you can never delegate these judicial responsibilities purely to prosecutors and clerks. So there's complete oversight of anything that comes in by mail. It has to be signed off on by either Judge Nordahl or by me.
Thank you.
And I would just like to make one last comment of a kind of historical nature, and I hope Judge Nordahl appreciates it. When I got out of law school, Bob Woodward had just finished up all his Watergate reporting, and he wrote a book that was a bestseller entitled The Brethren. And back in 1976, everybody just assumed that judges were men. The entire United States Supreme Court at that time, there were no sisters. They were all brothers. So I think that it's quite historic and something that we ought to comment on and be pleased about, that times have changed in Bronxville.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you.
That was absolutely terrific, and I think Trustee Fredericks is right. We're going to ask you to commit to coming back on a yearly basis, and we need to be doing this. So,
Can I ask one question?
Absolutely.
Are there, in between, these kind of annual updates, are there, do you provide a written summary, kind of a 6-monthly or quarterly summary of cases adjudicated and,
On a monthly basis, we have to report to the state the funds taken and the cases
Do we see that report, or that just goes right up to the state?
It goes to the state, and then Lori West, the treasurer, does handle the financial aspect.
Yeah. I'd just be curious, not just the financial side, but just the kind of the system, how it's,
I believe it just tells you how many cases were disposed of. I don't think it gives you a breakdown of how many criminal, how many traffic. I think it's just a number of how many cases were disposed of.
it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. But if a trustee should want to ask any of you, kind of just what an average month in terms of, yeah, because,
Report that we produce, for, a monthly meeting to, just to look at.
Yeah, thank you.
And that breaks it down as far as how many criminal cases, civil cases, and vehicle and traffic. The parking is a separate system, but I think give a breakdown of how many parking tickets are disposed of.
because honestly, that would kind of educate all of us, and because I don't think if we could guess on a percentage basis and guess correctly what you all handle. So maybe on occasion, I might ask you for that to share with the, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And, we'll take a moment break because you go enjoy your evening. It's
But
beautiful.
also feel free to stay.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you. When has anybody stayed? Yeah, nice try. Only the high school students who were compelled. Yeah.
Wow, committee people, they.
Oh, but they're our loyal, yes, yeah. And we're doing some changes thanks to them tonight, so, quickly, mayor's report, probably the best news of the week for us was the announcement of the Iona College, New York Presbyterian, together establishing a New York Presbyterian Iona School of Health Services, which will be located here on the Bronxville campus. And this is just, I was talking to Trustee Barron's on the Pondfield Road tonight, and this is just a win-win-win for all of us, how it's going to be helpful to everyone. And Iona already expects to have 25% of their incoming freshman class wants to be in the health services school. So I think we couldn't have, I can't think of a better outcome in terms of, and the hospital is thrilled. I've talked to the head of the hospital, the head of the college, and this is great news for all of us.
Will students be enrolled on the Bronxville campus in September?
They're working on that. They're doing an inventory of the buildings. So I'm not so sure, honestly, September, maybe January, but they're looking at kind of equipment they need, what raw materials they have. So I honestly don't think they're coming right after.
I don't believe that was the,
Yeah, I think the idea was that
they said the fall of 2022.
yes, exactly, and just get it ready in the spring.
The one question that I had as a follow-up to that, I think it was mentioned by one of the trustees at our last meeting, was who is transitioning the security office at Concordia? I'm sure that that's going to be transitioned to some Iona security folks, but it probably does make sense to have the chief or someone in Village Hall just liaise with them, because obviously it's a big campus, and there aren't going to be people on it for a while, and the Concordia security staff is leaving. It might just be useful to figure that status
You
out.
mentioned that, and I actually called the head of Iona because that was such a good point. And they have a whole security team that they're ready to put in place, but
Right.
they're arranging meetings with the chief to discuss that. And so it was you prompted me to make that phone call,
I
because
think it was actually someone else who did. I
all
don't think it
right.
was.
But it was there as a result, but Iona had already kind of thought ahead, and they're working with the chief.
And likewise, yeah, and security is currently continuing under, with the existing head of security with Concordia right now. And the building inspector and I were speaking, and he's been keeping Paul updated, and Paul and I just,
So he's staying on with Iona?
we don't know about it. He hasn't been told yet, so right now, he's continuing on full-time as head of security. I was communicating that with Paul, and Paul and I discussed that, yes, likewise, just to be kept in the loop with what happens with Iona, and the chief is
Right.
aware of that, so.
Because
for the future
technically,
once.
the deal is not closed. They're talking about closing it in late August.
Right.
So right now, Jim's absolutely right. Concordia is in charge of security. Yep. All right, and I guess, couple residents mentioned they saw our garbage truck wandering in Mount Vernon, and we did loan a.
People tell you about this?
People, oh, yes, yeah.
They think they lost their GPS?
Maybe they were going to Johnny's Pizza. But the mayor of Mount Vernon, who's a good friend of the village, we talked, and she could use some help, so our team assembled, called Jim on a Sunday and Victor, and, by 5 the next morning, we had delivered a garbage truck to Mount Vernon. So it's thanks to Jim and DPW. And then just to sort of, just to think about our giving garden could use some help this year. I think our donations are down and our need is up, partially because of COVID. 1 in 5 people in Westchester are actually food insufficient. And in past years, believe it or not, we have harvested 300 plus pounds of vegetables from that little garden, and we send them to the Mount Vernon Soup Kitchen and in Tuckahoe, the Eastchester Community Action Program. So if you want to help out, you can even send a check to Village Hall for the Giving Garden. And I have one other request to ask for your generosity, and it's our ambulance service. EVAC is in a little bit of a crunch. They really want to add another advanced life support paramedic, so there is one on every shift. And a lot of people don't know that our ambulance service is 100% private donations. It's not in our budget, Tuckahoe's budget, or Eastchester's budget, unlike police and fire. So it would sort of seem logical it would be, but it's not. So if there's any way, they're really trying to get this paramedic on board. And if anybody could just think about helping out.
Would that be going on their website?
EVAC website, and their address is actually 257 Main Street in Eastchester. And any donation goes a long way. So, and that's what I have. Village administrator, I didn't mention, because I figured you're going to mention how we're going to rip up the village over the next month, right? With Con Ed and curbing and roads.
Oh, it's underway.
Yes, yeah.
Good job at ripping up the village.
Yes, yeah,
So, yes,
I can't wait for leaf season.
yeah.
Everything in this business is seasonal, and, I apologize to the community for all the Con Ed work. The work on Midland seems to be progressing very slowly, quite frankly, but it's, Con Ed is dealing with the same rock, which they knew they would in front of the women's club for that line, but they're almost completed with that. Hopefully by the beginning of next week they will be, and then the rest of that area has been excavated already. So the goal again is to get them off Midland as soon as possible, get that paved before the end of August. The other work that's continuing is up on Elm Rock. That's progressing real nicely. They're also going to be going down Oriole on Lee Place. And again, the goal here is to coordinate our paving with their work. So, and then at Pondfield and Locust is another project. So it's trying to take advantage of a lot of residents being out of town so we can try to minimize that inconvenience. So, and then there'll be lots of paving that will follow. The only items that I wanted to mention, Mayor, is we are anxiously awaiting our American Rescue Plan monies. I understand actually that the town of Eastchester comptroller received theirs today. So ours did not hit our bank account yet, but I will be checking with our treasurer every day. So hopefully shortly. They don't give you any notice on this other than that we applied quite some time ago. And again, we're anticipating our first payment to be approximately $325,000, and we'll be setting that up in a separate account for all the calls and conferences that have been on, since the reporting on that, on the use of those monies is very extensive. So more details on that to follow. I just also wanted to mention that, and maybe Helen or Trustee Knapp or Trustee Fredericks might have some follow-up, but tomorrow AM, I am meeting with the county planner at 9:30 up at Dusenberry and 22, and then we're gonna this is the county planner that's basically been dedicated to walking, pedestrian-friendly efforts to improve walkability in the county. So that she's going to help us assess and prioritize our walkability needs. So we're going to start from there, where we started to discuss the feasibility of a crosswalk across 22, and then march all the way down downtown. And then I was just going to say, if any of the board members had time afterwards, if you wanted me to take you for a tour of the DPW building, we can run over and do that. Otherwise, I think that's just the most important.
What's the timing of utilizing the new building?
Yeah.
It will be ready for use by the end of next month. So we're despite all the rain, we're pretty close. They're actually finishing the offices in the breakout room upstairs and some of the drainage improvements outside. So you'll see that.
That's a huge change for this village.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really exciting, and then likewise at the next month we'll also make some changes to the configuration that we've been working with for Palumbo Place here. So there'll be more to follow on that.
And Jim, you said you were working on the configuration of for the food scrap collection.
Yes,
area.
Yes, with that, I'll provide you, maybe even if we walk out afterwards, I'll show you some of the ideas that of how that flow would work for people coming and dropping off their food waste. So we're getting there. The landscaping is going to have to, the plantings themselves will have to be done in the fall, and I am working with members of the Green Committee to get some of their input on some of increasing the number of native plants. Obviously, we can't plant right now, but otherwise it's the landscaping, tiles, and retaining wall improvements that we're just finishing up. And likewise, simultaneously, the roof replacement on the old DPW building is almost complete. So, and then, of course, at the end of the day, Palumbo will be repaved entirely and restriped. So I'm working on that as well. So again, it's still a lot to do within a little over a month, but we're getting there. Yep, we're really getting there. The only other thing I just wanted to mention is, first, I just wanted to, I'm not sure if everyone knew, but wanted to congratulate Stephen, who's going to be getting married at the 1st of next month. So, and
I gather no justices or mayors will be marrying you.
right, and actually the intention was to get married last year, right? So another COVID wedding that was postponed.
You're letting him go on a honeymoon? You're giving him time?
I know. Narrow amount of days.
Narrow.
This is tough. And then I just, as you could probably see, or not see, our treasurer is not here, and we wish Lori Voss a speedy recovery. She underwent surgery a couple weeks ago, and she's moving along. So looking forward to getting her back in the office. And I don't know if the trustees wanted to say anything about the discussion that we had with Legislator Walters, and I'll leave that up to Helen or Bill, that's all.
Yeah, we've been having, regular, bi-weekly, I think, meetings with Legislator Walter, and I think it's great to, keep those lines of communication open. One of the primary reasons is the county has many pockets of money available to help us on projects that are of value to the village, like improving infrastructure for pedestrians, for bike lanes, for senior citizens. So I think it's very good to hear information from her about money that might be available for projects that we're working on.
Yeah, and I think one idea that was discussed, again, just getting people on the phone sometimes generates thoughts, is that as Bronxville is generating its new regular email bulletin, there was some discussion about how there are programs, for example, for senior assistants, not only at the county, but obviously here locally. And, the thought was raised that maybe we could find someone, maybe it's Jim Palmer, who seems to do everything, and he volunteered, as Jim almost always does, to put together in sort of just one place that you might even put every month or in every issue of the electronic newsletter that just sort of says you have resources for seniors, because it can't be the case that people may go for 3, 4, 5, 10 years without ever needing those resources, but one day they'll sort of say, this year I might really be able to use that resource, and to have just sort of in one place something that sort of says there are these county resources, there are these local private resources in the village. But just generally to Helen's point, good to have these liaisons to know all these resources. And again, congratulations to Jim, and I know Trustee Barron's very involved in the newsletter, and I want to thank you, Mayor, for circulating the Mount Vernon version of their electronic newsletter, which I thought was very well done, and I think this clearly is the way of the future and is an innovation that's here to stay.
Agree.
Yeah.
I think also if we take your suggestion and do a senior resource guide or, links, whatever, with what's available here in our village and then also at the county, we could then maybe have a link on our website as well if we don't already. And that would be a permanent spot for it as well.
Okay, Mr. Palmer, anything else?
I think that's it. Yep.
Okay, I need a motion to approve our minutes from the June 14th meeting, both the executive and work sessions and the regular meeting, as well as the June 28th work session minutes. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And I have to say, Marianne, not only are the minutes terrific, but I just have to say, how most people thank their family for getting them where they are. Mine's very supportive, but this woman fixes my phone, my iPad, my printer, and she loans me umbrellas when I forget it's raining out. So I would not be in this job without you. So it's a huge thank you. So long overdue. All righty, I need a motion to open a public hearing, local law 9-2021, to amend the code of the Village of Bronxville by adding new chapter 120, opting out of the licensing and establishing of retail cannabis dispensaries and on-site cannabis. Do I have someone who would open the public hearing?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Trustees, any comments on this before I open this topic to the public? I guess just a little background to share with those listening. The law passed in New York State gave every community the option to opt out with a deadline of December 31st. The issue is the law was passed, but the so-called Cannabis Management Regulation and Control Board has not been constituted, so there are no regulations. So this seemed to be the prudent way to go, which a lot of our colleagues have been going. Many of our neighbors have already done this because we don't know what the rules are going to be, and it's frankly much easier to opt out and learn and listen than it is to opt in and extricate yourself. Do you think, counsel?
Yes, if you don't opt out
Right.
by the 31st of December,
Right.
you can never opt out.
Right,
But if you do opt out, you can always opt back in.
right,
So this is really I look at this as a keep your options open.
I do
You
too.
foreclose your options, you have no options and other options if you do nothing. If you opt out, your options are all open. You can either leave your opt-out in place, or you can opt back in once you find out what the regulations are going to be.
right. Because this was a case, and it happens sometimes, it's no criticism, the law was ahead of the execution. So I think we're doing the prudent thing and doing what most of our neighbors are doing. So,
Eastchester has already opted out.
already opted out.
Anybody in Westchester opted in? Or is intending
Just
to opt in?
non-action by December
Is an
31st
opt-in.
leaves you
Yeah.
in forever.
Okay.
So you just do nothing if you want to
Yeah.
opt.
Do we know if anybody is planning to do that? I'm just curious.
No, I know I heard it said at another meeting the other night that so far the town of Mamaroneck and the village of Mamaroneck have not done anything, but that doesn't mean
That doesn't
they
mean
won't.
anything, yeah.
So I think.
There's plenty of
many-
time still.
Many are talking about it.
Right. I know Scarsdale and Larchmont are having major conversations about it, and now Somers opted out.
Larchmont is now, as of a few nights ago, opted out.
That's what I
On the
thought.
same theory that we were just discussing, to keep options open.
Makes perfect sense.
Anyone in the audience who wants to talk about that particular local law? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll move it.
And a second.
Second.
Trustee Barons. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And the next, I need a motion to open a public hearing to submit on the topic of submitting our 2 community development block grants to Westchester County in an effort to apply for federal funding. They involve upgrades to the intersection of Midland and Pondfield and upgrades to the West Side Circle.
Mayor, are we taking these together as one?
Yes, yes, because they're in the same application. All right, did I get a motion to open that one?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Trustees, any comments on this?
Jim, when you were developing the budget for these, do you feel fairly good about where you are, or you think that we have room to move? If we get approval on one of them and they go over, then are we responsible for that amount, or will the consortium HUD come up with the overage? Do you know how that works?
Sure. I think our numbers are reasonable. I think when these applications are reviewed by the county, they're going to do a real scrub of the numbers, and they will fund up only to a certain point, already. So so yes, any additional. I mean, at the end of the day, we'll take the project out to bid, and yes, if it did exceed it, the county's only going to fund up to a certain point, unless there was the extreme circumstance that there weren't sufficient number of applications and the county had extra money, but it seems like the competition for this cycle, these two applications are for the public certifications for the 22 to 2024 community development block grant cycle, and there were over 100 applications submitted. So competition is fierce, but I think the numbers are reasonable, but yes.
On that topic, sorry, I would have thought that the Four Corners intersection would cost more, but it's actually 125 for the west side and 95 for the Midland Pondfield, so I was just...
No, and that represents the application that we submitted to the county. So the intersection improvements here will cost an estimated $250,000. We're requesting 50% of that from the county, $125,000. It should be the West Side Circle, unless we're requesting some 90,000 on the west side.
It's opposite on this one. The West Side Circle says 125.
Yeah.
Let's see.
And the Four Corners says 95.
I'll have to double check those numbers. I'll have to double check those now. But at the end of the day, what we're applying for is up to 50% of the approximate cost.
And did the county guide you, Jim, in that, the 50% of the cost, or is that all that we are allowed to apply for?
That's all we're allowed to, that's all we'll get is 50%. Yep. And as I said, we'll review the numbers with the county and adjust as necessary. And if they think the number's a little bit high, then we would simply get less.
But would you just double check to Trustee Knapp's point that the numbers weren't juxtaposed?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
And then, Jim, there's a chance that we will get one or none or two of these grants, right? There's no guarantee we're going to get both of these grants or one of these grants. There's a possibility we don't get any of the grants.
Absolutely, or it might be, right, and again, this is for a 3-year cycle, so we put one application in for 2022, we put one application in for 2023, so that may change, but there's a possibility that we won't get, that we won't get anything. What we were trying to emphasize here is that both of these projects would be of significant benefit to our senior population and enhance their access to the services in the village, and improve safety for them, et cetera, et cetera. Yep.
All right.
And for that matter, we'll make sure these applications are on the website for the public. But the first one is for improvements at Midland and Pondfield, which includes pedestrian push buttons where we don't have them now, new traffic signals, new handicapped, fully accessible drop curbs, sidewalk improvements and curbing, again, to improve access to the Four Corners and all the services and all the buildings that are here with the seniors, many of the seniors, a dense portion of the senior population that lives in close proximity. And then likewise, the other project is for improvements at the West Side Circle, also in close proximity to a dense area of the village's housing where a significant number of the seniors live, to, again, improve their access to the hospital, improve their access to the train line, et cetera. So, yep.
Yeah, just very briefly, I think we should all stress that, as we've discussed in prior work sessions and meetings, both of these traffic intersections and coagulations are really not at modern code standards. They probably wouldn't be permitted to be built if one were doing it from scratch. And so this is not just doing stuff for the sake of doing stuff. The intersection at the Four Corners is to my understanding, not regulation. And I think we've certainly heard the chief and others discuss the number of accidents and incidents that happen there. And I think, Mayor, you had pointed out to me that crossing between the hospital and Eastbourne, Westbourne, and I had never appreciated how poor the signage and traffic control devices were as you crossed to the hospital. And, I've lived in the village a long time, and I thought, gee, how has that happened? And I can well understand your recounting that there have been several accidents of pedestrians being hit. So this is not just doing stuff for the sake of getting money to do something. This is really a safety issue and good safety issues to address.
Well said, well said.
Right, and
Yeah.
and just to clarify, so just looking at the two projects, and again, so the first one where you have the project narrative, and again, that's for Midland and Palmfield. What we're requesting here between construction and design is $125,000 for the county, so estimating a total project cost of $250,000. Is it possible that the project comes in a little bit higher than that? Yes. Is the county obligated to fund anything more? No, but we're also trying to be competitive here with our peers, where the fact of the matter is so the way the process works is the county will review all these applications, follow up with all the applicants. Eventually, one of the other items on the agenda is CDAG rep. The CDAG reps, the advisory group, will review the applications in conjunction with the county planning department, make recommendations to the county board of legislators, who then packages them up and chooses the programs that then get submitted to the federal government, if that makes sense, because this is, again, unlike cities that apply for community development block grant funding on their own, we're part of a consortium of towns and villages who, again, take advantage of the county resources, and the county resources, the best resources, really their staff. We talk about the planning department, it's the planning department that provides a lot of resources to the community. So they review the applications, and they do all those reporting requirements that the federal government requires. So with that being said, it looks like where the other project numbers are slightly higher if we applied for a total of $155,000, that would be a total project cost of $310,000, and I just that'll be a number I'll discuss with the county, because we'll make some adjustments to that. We can't expect to improve the entire intersection. Again, we're competing with 100 other applications for still a limited pot of money that's coming to Westchester County as an Irving County. So I'll discuss that with the county team. Yep.
All right, so these numbers will move around a little bit.
Exactly. Yep.
Trustees, any other comment? Open it to the public to discuss either of those intersection improvement grants. Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion to close this public hearing?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And given our many months' discussion of both of these, I think the trustees, we are ready to adopt both of these local laws. Am I correct? Both the cannabis and the grant applications?
Actually, in the case of so you really just need to adopt the one local law. The other one is just closing the public hearing and
approving it.
And approving the submittal of the applications, that's all.
Right,
Yeah.
so one is an adoption and one's an approval.
Right, so Mayor and Jim, on those two.
Yes.
On the cannabis, because it's theoretically subject to permissive referendum, and on the CDBG, because I did see in some of their instructions, Jim, that they were looking for roll call votes. I would just
Right.
ask if on those two items, you could do roll call votes,
Yeah.
which just means that each trustee's and mayor's name will be called out,
Right.
and they will give their vote.
Can you do a very brief sentence on that permissive referendum?
Yeah, the state legislature in the bill that enacted the so-called cannabis law provided that if you opt out, the law that you enact to opt out is subject to permissive referendum. There are certain laws that get enacted that are subject to permissive referendum, and they have made this one of them. Meaning that if a certain percentage of the voters in the last election of the village brought on a petition, a referendum could be brought on the law. So anyway, roll call votes on the first two.
No, I understand. Okay, so let's do the first one, adopting local. Did we have a motion and a second then for the local law
We
number 9?
need a motion and a
Yep, okay.
second.
So moved.
Second.
All
I'm
those
sorry,
in
who did
favor?
I'm sorry, who did the first one?
Helen.
Helen.
okay.
Oh, no, then you need to
Yep.
do a roll
Okay,
call.
so it was Helen and then trustee, okay, so trustee Knapp,
Aye.
trustee Fredericks,
Aye.
trustee Barons,
Aye.
deputy mayor Underhill, and Mayor Morvan.
Aye,
Okay. and-
approved.
Right. Okay, and then if we could just have, if someone could make a motion and a second on, again, submitting these two applications to Westchester County.
Could I just make a quick note on the resolution? You have, whereas the village joined the Westchester Urban County Consortium for the purposes of participating. It's not, is it, there's other benefits for joining the consortium, so I want to make sure that it's among other, or it's not the only purpose that we joined. I mean, it's the primary purpose,
Right.
but there are some additional benefits to seniors and other
Excellent point,
things.
yep.
So maybe, I don't know the exact wording, but lawyers down the block there have better wording, or among others or something. The first sentence of all three of these that we have next.
Maybe Westchester County, the village joined the Westchester County Urban Consortium for the purposes of, among others.
That's what I've written, but I'm.
Joined it for the,
Among others,
Or among others, the purpose of
For, among
participating.
others.
yep.
for, among others, participating in the federal community of Mount Blanc. Excellent, great point. Okay, and did we have a motion and a second on that? I'm sorry. If, with those amendments. to this.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, on the question, trustee Barons,
Aye.
deputy mayor Underhill,
Aye.
trustee Fredericks, trustee Knapp,
Aye.
and Mayor Marvin.
Aye. Motion approved.
Okay, and the next item then, consistent with our submittal of our applications, as I think I briefly mentioned, each community that's part of the Urban County Consortium is entitled to have one resident represent them in the review of the applications. And I've made a recommendation here for you with a resolution of appointing Peter Thorpe to that role.
And I think before we get motions, I was thinking Peter lives in Stoneleigh, so he is a senior citizen. He's lives right near one of the first grants we're applying for. He's very involved in Gramerton Village. He was on our police review committee, and he has children and grandchildren in the village. So I think for a million reasons, he's a wonderful choice to do this.
I saw his daughter in town today, and she was, he's very delighted to have been considered.
Perfect. All right, so do I have a motion to appoint Peter Thorpe?
So moved.
And second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And then we have Mr. Palmer. I'll let you, the leaf blower. I've been hogging the motions tonight. I'm sorry.
Okay, so the next motion would be to schedule the public hearing for amending the leaf blower ordinance. And for the public's edification, we do have copies of the proposed amendments here. I'd also provide a copy of it to a couple of our residents. We'll make sure it's available on the website. And what you have before you, the draft that's before you, follows the work session that you had at the end of June. I don't know if you wanted to just summarize what some of those principal changes were, but it follows the recommendations tweaked slightly that came out of discussions with the Green Committee when they did their presentation.
And thank you to the members of the Green Committee who are here tonight. You have been so supportive and galvanized us. That's really the word to do this. And for the public, currently, you can't use the gas blowers from June 1st to September 30th. And the change we're proposing at the September meeting is to add the periods December 15th through March 15th, and then change the current regulations from May 15 through October 15. And just to comment, we're probably in the middle of all our neighbors, because the Green Committee did an exhaustive study of communities. And so this was kind of bring us more, quite frankly, don't you agree, in line with most communities. I mean, we have the one end where Eastchester has no rules, I was reading, and Larchmont wants to ban them completely. And everybody else is probably where we're going, or even a little bit more when I was doing my reading last night. So we're kind of in the pendulum with most of our colleagues.
And Mayor, I'd also like to add that we added, through our work session and our deliberation, Monday through Saturday, excluding holidays, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Perfect, thank you because that is important.
Can I just ask, would there be any benefit in including a section just specifically saying that handheld, battery-powered leaf blowers will be able to be used? I don't know if other communities have included that, but just to make that a little more clear, that while we're banning certain ones, that others will still be allowed, just for those people who do want to.
Yeah, I'll kind of defer to council. What are your thoughts on that, Jim?
I'm a little reluctant to pick out one kind
see.
and say it's
Yeah.
included. I think maybe we could do it, somehow, I think when and if you enact the law, we could somehow try to make it clear, make sure we publish it on the website.
What I was going to say is,
Through communication.
yeah, I would do, one of the things that you had suggested, or Trustee Fredericks had suggested first, and if you do decide now to schedule this hearing for September, then I will notify all the landscaping, you wanted me to notify the landscaping companies of the September meeting. And then we do have an excellent database now of all landscapers, so if it's, once it is adopted, then certainly we could send we could send a letter out to all the landscapers, and then we could do a notification to the residents via our.
I know, for example, now there are
Right, encouraging the use.
non-handheld electric ones as well. There are rolling electric ones. And I don't know what.
So you don't want to put
We'd
that
have
in
to
the
think of
law.
everything.
Right, I got it. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, trustees, any other comment and this is just to schedule the public hearing for our September 13th meeting, because we have to legally do it this way. Do I have a motion to schedule the hearing?
Heartily moved.
Heartily moved. That's the first heartily move. I like that. I'll second it.
Is that a hearty second?
Already, yeah. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And finally, our last item, it's a little esoteric. Mr. Palmer?
Yes, and I gave you a hard copy. I apologize for just emailing that to you. But our assessor is simply requesting that you authorize him to retain special counsel Justin Siebert. As you know, we use outside counsel from time to time, and he's looking for their assistance for certain matters that they have expertise in, that's all.
Essentially, this is commonplace. Sometimes he needs a little help when the issues are, sort of deeper or precedential in this case. So do I have a motion to approve the appointment of the taxation counsel?
So moved.
And a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Trustees, before I open it to any public comments, do you trustees have any final comments?
I just have one little thing. I always am interrupting you. Okay, yeah, I heard you. Yeah. So I don't know who started this, but the Coffee with a Cop.
Yes.
But I think there was the first one was last month, which was very successful.
Yes.
I know I have the next one, August 4th.
Oh,
Which
wonderful.
has been upgraded to breakfast with the
Good
cop.
point to announce that, yeah.
Yeah, everybody put that in their calendar. It's at the Bronxville Diner, 9:30 in the morning, I think, on August 4th, and I guess it's going to be a continuing series.
Yeah,
throughout the
the
fall to meet the
officers
officers.
loved it. And you're right, we went coffee with the cop, breakfast with the cop, maybe
Lunch?
caviar with the cop. Right.
Okay, scrap that.
Scrap that.
Cocktails with a cop has
Scrap that, too.
Yeah.
Now, briefly, I was just going to add, I was going to mention that as well, so I'm glad Trustee Knapp mentioned it, but also to alert villagers that we have a new police officer,
Thank you.
Matthew Stein. a young man who I think impressed all of the trustees. I saw him on the beat at one of the Pops concerts 8 days ago. And I think this is, I think we all feel it's a very promising hire. And so if villagers see someone who's a younger guy, I think he's going to be on bicycle patrol and doing a lot of community outreach. I'm sure he would be very happy if people came up and introduced themselves. He seems like a very gregarious and social guy, and I think we all welcome him to the Bronxville family.
Perfect. And the chief mentioned that I think Officer Stein is going to come in September, when he thought there would be more villagers home to watch the show, because he wanted to make sure people, recognized him. So he's coming to our meeting in September.
Well, if I may make a comment to follow up on these two comments. Breakfast with the cops, lunch with the cops, hiring a new officer focused on community policing. There's other initiatives as well. The quarterly training reports, the newsletters put out by the police department, publishing monthly police statistics on the website. These are all initiatives coming out of this extensive police community relations committee review. Right. And the police department and the chief took this extremely seriously. And one of the major comments coming out of this is that we just need to do a better job of community outreach. And I applaud the chief, Jim and Mary, and the whole force for really taking this very, very seriously.
Thank you.
You're here.
Any other comments? Before I open it to public comment, I'm going to ask the members of the Green Committee, if you would just come up to the microphone and introduce yourself, because we owe you a great deal of thanks for not only your work on the leaf blowers, but all you're doing to help us with the pollinator pathway and climate smart community. And as soon as we get DPW finished, we're going to be doing our our wonderful project with the food scrap. So if you would introduce yourself.
Sure, I'm Ellen Edwards. I'm the chair of the Green Committee and also chair of the Climate Smart Task Force.
Yeah.
This is Carol.
Carol Upshur. I was a faculty member, so you can tell. I'm a member and very interested. I am a scientist, medical scientist, but also I just want to comment that a lot of the things the village is undertaking have climate and energy, connections, and just to have everyone keep thinking about that. We're mentioning even these community development grants. One important activity around reducing traffic in the community and promoting walking and biking and everything is going to have to do with these, intersections in terms of school kids and things like that. And so we just have to put that cap on our heads, I think, for everything we do. So I appreciate the opportunity to participate.
Thank you.
And thank you again for acting so expeditiously on the leaf blowers, and just really, really appreciated it. Once you decided that's what you were going to tackle, you did it in record time, so I appreciate it.
Well, your efforts contributed to that record time.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you made the great point, Carol, that these intersections, we're trying to tell children all over the village, walk to school, walk to lessons, and we have to make the major intersections as safe as possible so that we're encouraging them to walk to school. So you're absolutely right. The intersection of these things are really special. All right, anyone else here tonight who would like to speak on any subject? Yes, David.
I'd like to ask a question first. When you were opening the leaf blower discussion.
David, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, okay, there we go. Is that
Introduce yourself.
Oh, okay, David Weir. I manage the Bronxville Cemetery, which is right behind Village Hall, and so I just have a question to ask. I may have a statement to make. When a public hearing is scheduled for September 13th, does that mean it will be voted on at that night, at that session?
It can be, and it often is. And what we need to do, and council, make sure I'm saying this correctly, you schedule them so that there's 30 days of approximately notice, or one meeting to the next meeting of notice to residents as to what's going to be on the docket. Is that correct?
So I think to the credit of this village, that's your usual practice. It could
Right.
actually be done more quickly.
Right.
But I think you always try to give, at least a meeting-to-meeting notice.
Exactly. But it can be voted on. Yes, David.
And I better say something now tonight.
Okay.
And I have 7 copies. I'm sorry, I don't have one actually for everybody, but I will pass it around afterwards. Thank you for allowing me and the public to consider this proposed amendment to the Code of the Village of Bronxville, both this evening and last month. As manager of the Bronxville Cemetery, a cemetery owned by the Ridgefield Park, New Jersey Reformed Presbyterian Church and located in the village since 1852, I have worked with leaf blowers since my father purchased one around 1964 for the maintenance of the cemetery. I do not have objections to the proposed amendment except for the following. Section 120-17, purpose. The many points brought up in the paragraph are debatable, and it seems to me should not be placed in the legal code for future precedent. I would recommend that the trustees simply use a portion of the last sentence of that paragraph. Quote, "It is the policy of the village to regulate the use of internal combustion leaf blowers," unquote. And that's from the last part of that paragraph there. While I realize that gardeners and families are often operating these machines on very small lots, it is important to remember that there are some large tracts of land in the village that need major heavy maintenance during the periods that leaf blowers are allowed, or you're proposing that they be allowed. These areas include the property of the village itself, Village Hall here, the public library, village parks, the Bronxville Public School, the Iona Concordia campus, several churches, some apartment complex, and of course the cemetery that I manage and maintain. I would therefore like to go on public record as stating that these limits should not be seen or used as a prelude or a precedent for a total prohibition of internal combustion leaf blowers in future years, a prohibition that could be based on the way Section 20-17 is written. Concerning Section 20-19, prohibition on the operation of internal combustion leaf blowers during certain months, it would be helpful also to indicate the positive statement in addition to the negative statement. Quote, "Internal combustion leaf blowers may be operated during the following periods of the year, March 15th to May 15th, and October 15th to December 15th. Thank you for taking into consideration my remarks. Just the way it's written is what concerns me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And David, we certainly will have a conversation about that. Thank you. All right, any other comments? Seeing none, I would like a motion to adjourn our meeting.
I'll move it.
And a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Oppose? We will see everyone in September.